Okay, got cut off there, but let's continue on. This chapter is very, very important. We're looking at page 2081 in the Urantia book. We were just talking about humanism, and I was making the point that humanism, although it's well-meaning, it isn't going to cut it. You're going to run into certain areas where you're not going to be able to get the full picture. And one of those pictures that plagues humanism is called false sentiment. The left considers themselves humanistic because they would like to have healthcare for all, which everybody should be able to have that. We should redistribute the wealth, and their ideas are good about that. But like we were saying earlier, when it comes to requiring that everybody has a job, the secular humanists think that that's too authoritarian. But these ideas are playing a part on key weaknesses in the human ideology that cannot be reconciled unless you understand spirituality. And our example of that is just look at the political divide. That is the key weak, and the forces of evil know that control this world know that that is the political divide. Some people veer more towards this, what they call a bleeding heart, which is a Jesus type of concept, right? To want to care for your fellow humans, okay? Service mentality. That is a Jesus type of concept. Other people want to kind of encircle the wagons, and we got to make sure that we're protected first. And we also don't want to foster these basically criminals, people that are either doing crimes on the street in order to get their drugs, whether they be stealing and things like that. People look at that and say, why should that person get health care? And rightfully so. And that is a key weakness in humanity, that you either split one way or the other. And if it wasn't, then we wouldn't have this political divide. But how do you reconcile? Jesus said, don't give in to false sentiment, whatever. But if you understand false sentiment, then you understand that you're having a bleeding heart. You shouldn't be fostering people in order to do drugs and this and that. You have to be working towards rehabilitation. The Urantia book makes a clear distinction about that, which is why a lot of people reject aspects of the Urantia book, and they choose to only cherry pick the flowery parts, but they don't like the parts that say the plan went wrong here on your planet, and you are going to have to foster in some tough love, basically. But it really still is love. That's what false sentiment is. It's being anti, it's being pro tough love, okay? Whatever. So, here we go. At the time of this revelation, okay, so remember, okay, but you get the whole picture, and also when you become spiritual, and you can really, it's all spelled out here, folks. So you really got to get this book and go into all this stuff on your own. We're just glancing over. Remember, we're on page 2081 here. At the time of this revelation, the prevailing intellectual and philosophical climate of both European and American life is decidedly secular, humanistic, and this is where another way that the right wing, they want to have an influence of, well, they want religion into the schools, but what we really need is God. People can have their own religion, but we all have to settle on those religions being all under the same God, okay? For 300 years, Western thinking has been progressively secularized. Religion has become more and more of a nominal influence, largely a ritualistic exercise. And that's why people are rejecting religion in schools, because they're like, that's man's evolved religion, what they're rejecting. They're not rejecting true religion, which is a relationship between you and deity and divinity. The majority of professed Christians of Western civilization are unwittingly actually secularists. It's all about their club. And you can see it in how they behave, how they think that they need to usher in Bible prophecy by doing, bombings and militarization. And the book points out Jesus wouldn't even recognize the religion which was founded in his name. If he were to view it in this day and age, he would not even recognize it, because it's just a secularist group of people with similar ideas. If they truly believed in God, they would understand that truth is living. God is living. So the Bible gets updated. The Urantia book gets updated. You can't crystallize truth. That is what a spiritual person, that's their ideology. When you don't have that ideology, you're a religion. You're a secular, as they're saying, a secular religionist. Okay? They crystallize truth. And then now it's in this perverted, once you crystallize it, now you have to do things like bomb the Middle East to usher in Bible prophecy, like this. I don't even want to get into it. It required a great power, a mighty influence to free thinking. And then with that is all the corruption and too, the greed. So people will latch on to the Bible prophecy and just say, oh, we can do greed based on that. It required a great power, a mighty influence to free the thinking and living of the Western peoples from the withering grasp of a totalitarian ecclesiastical domination. Secularism did break the bonds of church control. So they're important signposts in eternity, folks, that we had this little thing called secularism, breaking that ecclesiastical, but then we need to advance on from that, okay? That was just a signpost. Remember, progress is the watchword of the universe. And now, in turn, it threatens to establish a new and godless type of mastery over the hearts and minds of modern man. This was in the 50s. I think it already has. It's the world system of things. The tyrannical and dictatorial political state is the direct offspring of scientific materialism and philosophic secularism. And again, they're not saying that these things are bad or wrong. They're saying they need to be put into their place and into perspective, into the cosmic whole. And once you do that, then you can have the total picture. And that's what this is all about. Secularism no sooner frees man from the domination of the institutionalized church than it sells him to the slavish bondage to the totalitarian state. Secularism frees man from the ecclesiastic slavery only to betray him into the tyranny of political and economic slave bondage, folks. And even the very rich are in economic slave bondage because they have the greed feeling that they need to support the country club membership, the bigger yacht, and that sort of thing, and they have to afford all those bills. That's still an economic slave bondage. It's a materialistic philosophy, and there's no end. There's no solving. There's no solution to these godless philosophies. They will all run into their thing. And if you want to try, you're free to try it. That's the beauty of the universe. If you think that these things are incorrect, you can try it your way and see what unfolds for you. I've already tried it. I wasn't always a spiritualist. Materialism denies God. Secularism simply ignores him. At least that was the earlier attitude. More recently, secularism has assumed a more militant attitude, assuming to take the place of religion whose totalitarian bondage it one time resisted. 20th century secularism tends to affirm that man does not need God. But beware, this godless philosophy of human society will lead only to unrest, animosity, unhappiness, war, and worldwide disaster. Even your climate disasters based on greed. And we haven't even touched that yet. Well, I mean, we started to, but remember, this isn't saying you can't have a government, but it has to be a government that is the greatest amount of good for the most amount of people. You know, you have to have it. You have to have it. That God is a government, the kingdom of God, as Jesus called it, or whatever you want to call it, the domain. If you don't like that word, the kingdom. That is a government. There's hierarchies in there, and everybody gets to participate in and enjoy. Secularism can never bring peace to mankind. Organization is not bad. You have to organize people, but you want to do it in the way that isn't crooked and corrupt and fosters the good stuff. Secularism can never bring peace to mankind. Nothing can take the place of God in human society. But mark you well, do not be quick to surrender the beneficent gains of the secular revolt from the ecclesiastical totalitarianism. So don't just do your, now we have to force people would read that and be like, oh, that's carte blanche for me to force a Bible into school. No, you need separation of church and state, okay? They say that religionists should operate within the state as their own spiritual religious entities operating for those values that foster the greatest and good. They don't force or coerce people into spirituality. They simply are the leaders, the ones with the best ideas. And then people say, geez, how'd you get all that? How'd you get the full picture? Oh, well, I became spiritual. I opened myself to the concept of a living truth, and this book was placed in my path. And this was a revelation for me. And do I need to force? I would never even consider forcing this book into schools or something like that. It should be, but the leaders themselves should be like, I am pro this book. This is what I read. We're not going to force it into your school. We're not going to force it down your throat. But this is the truth, and the world would be better off if they considered it. You see the difference? You lead by example, sort of thing. That's what God does. You don't force or coerce. Western civilization today enjoys many liberties and satisfaction as a result of the secular revolt. The great mistake of secularism was this: in revolting against the almost total control of life by religious authority, and after attaining the liberation from such ecclesiastical tyranny, the secularists went on to institute a revolt against God himself, sometimes tacitly and sometimes openly, and we see that in our left-wing politics. Or, I don't want to even say politics, but I want to say more like influencers, I guess, or voices, your left-wing voices being explicitly anti-God. In fact, one of my favorite shows is called Secular Talk. And I'm the most spiritual person going, but I really appreciate this person's humanism. But they are completely anti-God. And many of their segments are, but they're anti-Christianity. They don't understand yet that what God is, okay? They're still equating it. They're doing this exact fucking thing. To the secularist revolt, you owe the amazing creativity of American industrialism and the unprecedented material progress of Western civilization. And because of the secularist revolt went too far and lost sight of God and true _religion. What's true religion? Your own personal relationship to deity and divinity, to God, to the one God. Okay, that is true religion, and many people have that. We're all in the same religion because there's only one God. There also followed the unlooked, and this I'm talking universally. There also followed the unlooked for harvest of world wars and international unsettledness. So it's just going to give rise to that. It's not going to be the total picture. It is not necessary to sacrifice faith in God in order to enjoy the blessings of modern secularist revolt. Tolerance, social service, democratic. See, people, why this book is just, this is, who's writing this? Let's see. This is probably a midwayer or something. Does it not say who? It does not. I think all these papers are written by a midwayer. We're talking an advanced mind that is well beyond, that makes any human mind look like a slug, that makes Einstein look like a slug, okay? That's what we're talking here. Not that Einstein can't attain, or hasn't maybe attained more of this, but only when he's in line with divinity and thus, okay. This is a revelation, okay? And civil liberties. It is not necessary for the secularists to antagonize true religion in order to promote science and to advance education. Okay? It doesn't need to be one or the other. In fact, once you're really scientific, you are going to discover God. When you approach reality, Descartes did it. Who's the other famous one? Descartes was a scientist and he found God. Who's the other? Voltaire, was it? But secularism is not the sole parent of all these recent gains in the enlargement of living. Because it's, folks, I just want to go back to this. Because it's truth. If you're really a seeker of truth, you're going to find God. If you're a scientist who's really seeking truth, eventually you're going to have to go inward, and that's where you're going to find God. Behind the gains of the 20th century are not only science and secularism, but also the unrecognized and unacknowledged spiritual workings of the life and teachings of Jesus of Nazareth. Another thing that is hard for Eastern mystics to understand, or people that are New Age, they want to reject that because that's tied in with Christianity as well. But you should read this, okay? This is, this is under the life of Jesus, but this is after Pentecost. This was after his life. They're just explaining now how this rippled through society, basically. And when you read the life as it is presented in this book of Jesus, you'll find these nuggets of wisdom, like the fact about false sentiment that Jesus was against, and that'd be like, oh wow, that's a real applicable thing that we can use to solve the world's problems today, because people don't want to foster. People are against fostering those who don't want to help themselves and just giving them endless chances. I mean, even a family has to cut off their child from getting money from them if they're just going to use it on drugs, right? And it happens all the time. Sadly, we're trying to end these problems for people. We're trying to foster, growth and without God, without religion, scientific secularism can never coordinate its forces, harmonize its divergence and rivalrous interests, races, and nationalisms. And geez, are they right? Well, what's happening in the world today? Who would read this and say, well, let's look at history. Maybe there was a little pocket of history where this wasn't happening. Wrong. You're really not a student of history if you're thinking that there just wasn't constantly this divergent rivalry. This secularist human society, notwithstanding its unparalleled materialistic achievements, is slowly disintegrating. It has to, folks. Something can only be 51%, 50% false once it becomes, and evil, because they're basically, synonymous. A falsehood, an evil, untruth. Once that becomes 51, the seed of destruction. Wait, how's this one-liner go? Inside of every evil is the seed of its own destruction. So once it becomes 51, it's not going to be in harmony with universe principles. It's going to unwind, folks. It just can't. It's not sustainable, is how they would say it. The chief cohesive force resisting this disintegration of antagonism is nationalism. And nationalism is the chief barrier to world peace. Now remember, nationalism is an infantile disease. That's the measles of mankind. I forget who said that. Patriotism is fine. Patriotism is like cheering for your team. Hey, yeah, let's go. Nationalism is we are better than the other country, so we can walk all over them. We need to do what's in our interest at the cost and price of innocent lives. That's nationalism. That's the chief barrier to world peace. And so that needs to go by the wayside. The inherent weakness of secularism is that it discards ethics and religions for politics and power. Because they're they want their top dog into there, and spiritualists know that the only top dog is God. You simply cannot establish the brotherhood of men while ignoring or denying the fatherhood of God. That is just it's never going to change. That is never going to be not true. You just simply cannot do it. When you we've seen it in our lives. People are probably spiritual if they're watching this channel. Haven't you gained such a strength in order to be able to harmonize various situations, understand relationships better, that you can mediate things in different ways? You're starting to access spiritual strength, superhuman, beyond human strength when you become spiritual. And that is why, for instance, that is a key note in the Alcoholics Anonymous, whatever it is. What do they call it? Program, plan, whatever it is. One of them is submit your will to a higher power, because they know in gaining so much beyond human strength in doing that. And that has saved millions of people, folks. Secular, social, you get power from that. World-changing power. And you might not even be able to describe it. Secular social and political optimism is an illusion. Look at this book. Without God, neither freedom and because everybody's going to have their own political differences, and that's fine. They should have them. But when you have something beyond politics that you're working for, those differences can be made to work towards good. Without God, neither freedom and liberty nor property and wealth will lead to peace. The complete secularization of science, education, industry, and society can lead only to disaster. During the first third of the 20th century, Urantians, meaning people on this planet, killed more human beings than were killed during the whole of the Christian dispensation up to that time. Wait, let's read that again. During the first third of the 20th century, okay? And this is only the beginning of the dire harvest. Oh, how brutal is that statement? This is only the beginning of the dire harvest of materialism and secularism. Still more terrible destruction is yet to come. And I don't believe it. In fact, if I were to view the progression of the world, yes, we have free will. We can change this. This is only if this is harvested. It's not a prophecy or anything like that. But reading the energies as they are now, it is going to take this burn in order to get this world to change. That's just my prediction. I could be wrong. I hope I am wrong. But once we think we have a handle on things on this planet, oh, there's a disaster, there's a hurricane, there's a this, there's a that. It's isolated, it's pocketed. We can rebuild. We can rebuild. There's going to come moments where you can't rebuild. Financial collapse, whatever it may be, climate disasters. And we'll have to see. We'll have to see how we go about and change. This book is saying that they probably are reading it the same way as well. But they were even correct, because this came out in the 50s, right? So between the 50s and now, how much more did we see of this terribleness? But it can even be said of today. And we'll just have to see. Hopefully it's wrong. We can do what we can to try to make it wrong. And embrace our own spirituality. Embrace our own life-changing relationship with deity and divinity. Throw the book away if you don't want. It's within you. It's not within the book. It's just really, as you can see, it really sears through all those human weakness type questions and things that are dividing us and saying, there is a way. It's like classroom management. For higher and advanced beings, managing a planet is like a really good, effective teacher. Somebody's out of line, they discipline them, whatever. It's not that mysterious. It's not that difficult when you think of it. It's just planetary management, all on the same team. All right, so that's the video there, folks. And carry on into your own spiritual eternity. Remember, this is all just isolated. We're pointing these things out for instructive purposes only. They don't have to touch us. What should it matter if the whole world collapses around you, for you have eternal life, said Jesus of Nazareth. And that is true for you today. So don't let this be a cause of depression or anything like that. But awareness is queen to revelation. This book is revelation. Awareness is realizing where we are at today, because then you can contrast that where you are at internally with your own spiritual growth and ascension. Okay, see you next time.